Reading to you the third installment of my book entitled, Sir, We Found Your Dog, the story of my son Trent Stephen Schmidt. Part 1, Chapter 2, Military Intelligence. Trent was assigned an MOS as a human specialist, dispatched to Fort Huachuca for a period of training and then attached to the 173rd. It was only later, when the Army bereavement officer came to our home and began to review Trent's files, that we learned that Trent had achieved one of the highest scores on the military aptitude test. Captain, now Major, Ryan Corr informed us that Trent pretty much had carte blanche because of this. To share his graduation at Huachuca, we flew to Phoenix, rented a car, and drove to the fort to visit him. Slowly but surely, Wendy and I were learning a lot about the military complex in the United States, the names of the forts, anywhere they were located, along with their specialties. Our experience at this event was much different than what we experienced at Trent's graduation from basic at Fort Jackson. Trent was much more relaxed and confident, and it was good to enjoy the old Trent. From Huachuca, he was sent to Bamberg, Germany, where he fell in love with the life and culture there. He spoke of living in Europe as one of his fondest dreams come true, and even talked of living the rest of his life in Europe. More than once he noted how much time he spent in Europe in his career as a soldier as compared to the time he had spent in the United States as a soldier. In time, this would dramatically change, but at that moment, he seemed totally content. Mom and I couldn't help but recall that one of Trent's favorite things to do, and something I never discouraged because I secretly enjoyed it, was watching movies centered on military exploits. Band of Brothers, a must-see in our home every Christmas. Full Metal Jacket, The Longest Day, Dirty Dozen, The Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Good Morning Vietnam, Top Gun, Saving Private Ryan, Black Hawk Down, Glory, Sniper and Anything Like Sniper, the Jason Bourne trilogy, the British MI5 and Spook TV series, and the Rambo series. Trent always seemed to envision himself as being an undercover operative sent secretly by the government to take out some foreign foe. In those days, he would raise Wendy's ire by saying he would marry an exotic, beautiful woman, live secretly somewhere in Switzerland, and she would never see her grandchildren. He knew how dearly Wendy was looking forward to grandchildren, how it vexed her to no end to hear such tales. With a mischievous twinkle in his eye, he would assure her she wouldn't be able to find him. She, on the other hand, would assert that she would search the world over, track him down, have her way, spoiling her grandchildren. I was amused by this devilish repartee that went on between Trent and Wendy, because I had always asserted that Trent was my clone, only a much better and improved version. The relationship he had with his mother seemed to mirror my relationship with Wendy. She doted on him just like she doted on me. He pushed her buttons in many of the same ways I pushed her buttons. She would scold him like she scolded me, only with the added advantage of being his mother instead of his wife. When we learned that Trent was going to be deployed to Afghanistan, like most parents, we had strong feelings of foreboding. Not only was I concerned for his safety, but there were other fundamental values that were a part of our heritage. I was very much opposed to our nation's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I was troubled by the idea of my son's blood being spilled in questionable military adventures. I've learned since that I was like many parents of military personnel, caught in the conundrum of opposing the wars but supporting my sons. Understanding this, Trent sought to ameliorate the situation by engaging me as a resource for information to aid him in his work as an intelligence specialist. At his request, I began researching online, endeavoring to learn all I could about the details of Afghanistan. My assignment was to provide him with as much stateside news information about the war and about Afghanistan as I could. Forwarding these articles by email, he assured me that this was helping him in his task. So I did Google searches almost every day. I searched not only U.S. news and resource sites, but also foreign sites and news outlets. As I did this, I began to get a close-up picture of the area to which he was posted. Trent was assigned to Kop Shark in Logar Province and tasked with providing security for the surrounding district and trying to interdict Taliban fighters coming from Pakistan through mountain trails. Just before Trent was scheduled to ship out for Afghanistan, Wendy and I raced to Bamberg, Germany on her fall break. We had 4 days during which we were able to spend some final moments together. We used some of the time to drive down to Baden-Baden, the fabled hometown of my German forebears. It was both bitter and sweet as we dined at one of Trent's favorite restaurants in Bamberg, tipped back a few at his favorite pub. He proudly shared some of the lore of his military unit and gave Wendy a St. Michael's medallion, patron saint of paratroopers, for her to wear for good luck. He was resolute and committed to his mission, anxious to put it into action, all the training he had received. As Mother saw it. Trent was so smart, and the Army recognized it immediately. I knew he had an exceptional IQ of 135 from reviewing his school records, but when he took that Army aptitude test, he scored in the 98th percentile. Extremely exceptional. Excuse proud mama moment. I didn't know this from Trent, however. I was told this by Major Corps. This meant Trent had his choice of MOS, and the one he requested was Fort Huachuca, military intelligence. Trent was going to be a human operative. When our oldest son Todd left for his first summer at some fort, maybe bragged, I remember he got so much mail and packages from me he was nicknamed the mailman. He called me and said, "Mom, relax. I'm getting chided for all the mail I receive." I did relax, but not completely. Trent was my next focus, and I again probably overdid the cards, letters, and packages, but by contrast, he did not complain. Chapter 3. Dealing with my cognitive dissonance. As another way of coping with my son's choices, I began to organize an outline for a book entitled We Gave Him to You Whole, a story of a Midwestern youth caught up in patriotic zeal and childhood dreams. Raised in a preacher's home dedicated to serving and saving lives, it was difficult for me to imagine or to come to grips with the fact that both my sons were involved in a profession which trains its employees to take life reflexively and efficiently. I understood that great men of all centuries served honorably in the armed forces, my father among them. I also understood that some of the greatest heroes in the Bible were killers: Moses, King David, the Apostle Paul. This, however, never dissuaded me from speaking out against the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. My way of coping was to draft a story about a Midwestern youth who grew up in Sunday school, becoming a loving pastor, resigning and choosing to serve in the nation's war machine, ultimately losing his life in these futile efforts. The idea was simple. We gave Trent to the government whole. They gave him back to us, crushed and in pieces. At one point, I even attempted to contact Michael Moore, known for making scathing critiques of corporate greed and evil government practices. I hoped there would be an interest in this idea. I theorized that if I could produce a poignant story about one of America's finest young men dying in a misguided, failed effort to democratize other nations through the barrel of a gun, perhaps the spilling of my son's life's blood wouldn't be in vain. I hoped I could be influential in saving the lives of countless other young Americans. I hoped by shifting the national debate toward strong anti-war bias, national leaders would think twice before spilling the nation's choicest resources in ill-advised military adventures. I hoped I could make a significant difference, shifting America away from quests to control and dominate the natural resources of other nations, especially nations that had successfully resisted outside military intervention for millennia. I was then, and am now, strongly opposed to the dehumanization of non-American populations. I am opposed to the war propaganda machine and psyops being used on Americans by the United States government. I am opposed to making Americans insensitive to the deaths of innocent non-combatants, women, children, and the elderly. I am opposed to belittling the dignity of others by calling them kikes, wops, chinks, slopes, krauts, camel jockeys, ragheads, etc. As a Christian, I routinely put myself in the shoes of others as commanded by the Golden Rule, wondering how we as Americans would feel and react if another superpower were invading our homeland, doing to us what we are doing to others. I realize not all Americans share my views, but these and other thoughts competed for my psychic energy as I tried to deal with the cognitive dissonance that reality forced upon me. To support my sons was a priority, and Wendy and I were and are dedicated to supporting them. With respect to both sons, we assured them of our love and concern for their safety early and often. Trent's older brother Todd was and is a commissioned officer, and they had a bond of blood sworn to commit and to serve together. Both boys understood the mixed feelings Wendy and I had, and both encouraged me to read a book entitled On Killing by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. I did. I found it answered some of my questions and even enlightened me on some biblical passages. For example, the note in the scripture relating the feelings between Prince Jonathan and David. Both men had been in battle together against the Philistines and no doubt saved each other's life in desperate combat. Thus the souls of Jonathan and David were knit together, and their love for each other surpassed the love of women, as Mother saw it. From the day Trent left for his induction until his untimely end, my thoughts were pretty simplistic compared to Steve's. He was going to move and shake the earth until someone listened to his views on the current state of affairs of our beloved nation as it has gotten itself into the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. I, on the other hand, just sent a steady flow of cards and packages to my boys. I hope you'll look this book up. Sir, we found your dog. It will be on Amazon.